Chapter 5. We're now going to talk about Tupoto'a. Tupoto'a is the son of Tuku'aho. Tuku'aho is the king that was in Tonga that Tuponiwa, who's from Vavu, wanted to assassinate using his brother Finau, who was the king or the high chief of Ha'apai, to go help him assassinate Tuku'aho. Tuku'aho had wives, and one of his wives' attendants, Tuku'aho had a child with one of the attendants. We talked about Finau's daughter being married and having attendants with her as well. Tuku'aho had wives, and one of his wives' attendants he had a child with and had Tupoto'a. Tupoto'a was the main chief that was assigned to take the Port-au-Prince. So Tupoto'a has been around. Tupoto'a obviously had relationships here with Finau and with Tuponiwa. Now Tupoto'a, ever since his father was assassinated, wanted revenge on the person who assassinated him, which is Tuponiwa. So Tupoto'a goes to Finau Ulukalala and asks Finau if he can, be under his service and be friends with him for an opportunity to get close to Tuponiwa to kill him. Now, it was strange that Tupoto'a wanted to be friends with Finau Ulukalala, considering Finau Ulukalala was one of the main accomplices to kill Tupoto'a's father, Tuku'aho. But nonetheless, he didn't think that it was beneficial for him to try to kill Finau, or else he was going to die, because Finau was just a powerful chief. There were so many people around him, so many assassins, so many people who knew that if Tupoto'a attempted something on Finau, that Tupoto'a would die. So Tupoto'a went and became friends because they shared the same policy. They were more political, only Tupoto'a was a lot more ferocious. He was ready to kill. As soon as his father was killed and he knew who it was, which was Tuponiwa, he vowed a promise that he would never drink coconut milk until he acted vengeance against the person who killed his father, which was Tuponiwa. So now Tupoto'a is in the picture, befriending Finau and around him a lot more often. Tupoto'a would often whisper things to Finau, negative comments about the character of Tuponiwa. Now remember, it doesn't say specifically how Tuponiwa and Finau are brothers. It just says that they're brothers. Whether it's the same father and different mothers, or different mothers and same father, typically you would take your first name would be the family name of your father. So Finau, his father was from the Finau family, where Tuponiwa, his father was from the Tupo family. You have Finau Ulukalala, you had Finau Fisi, you had Finau Maufanga, which is Finau Ulukalala's dad. They put the family name before your own name. So Tupoto'a just means that his family name, he's from the Tupo family. Tupoto'a, Tuponiwa, it sounds like they're related somehow. But because of Tuku'aho's oppressive nature, Tuponiwa didn't like that and wanted to rid himself of the burden of contributing or sending tribute to Tonga more than they can handle. Tuku'aho was being very oppressive to the people by overburdening them with tributary things or tributary commodities from Vavu. Now Tupoto'a is trash talking Tuponiwa to Finau, staying close to it. Tupoto'a will tell Finau that he created some conspiracies, basically telling war stories to Finau. Yeah, I created this conspiracy and had some kind of rule over Vavu at some point, and sharing stories of grandeur in military force, and basically being a tough guy and telling war stories to Finau to gain the favor of Finau, or to at least hint to him, which Finau was picking up those hints. Tupoto'a would tell Finau, when I used to run Vavu, apparently he ran Vavu at some point before Tuponiwa, but knowing that Tuponiwa was there because Vuna left during the time they went to go assassinate Tuku'aho. Tuponiwa saying, Vavu flourished, it brought forth much wealth, right? Not only did they have the best kaba, even back then, the land itself was wealthy, with food, with crops, with everything that the land could provide. Tupoto'a was telling Finau, I did it better. I ran it better than Tuponiwa. Tuponiwa's not doing well, and I remember that he didn't pay full tribute to Tuku'aho, which makes you look bad, Finau. Tupoto'a's trying to stroke Finau a little bit to get him on his side. Tupoto'a would often remind Finau, remember, Tuponiwa, he's very treacherous. He continued to advise you to take chances and go attack Tonga often. He really isn't of Tonga or of the heart of Tonga. Even though he won the hearts of the people in Vavu, and Vavu loves him and made him chief and they want him to be their leader, he keeps on having conspiracies about Tonga to attack Tonga. So Tupoto'a is getting Finau to really think about the policy They're trying to share policies. We're on the same team as far as politics. Tupo Niwa isn't good for Tonga, and it's probably be a good idea for us to take him out. Tupo Toa was now bold enough to say, let's take out Tupo Niwa, Finau's brother. Finau finally gives in, but remember they're very tricky and conniving, because now Finau is agreeing with Tupo Toa. Okay, I guess we can do this, but we shouldn't do it right now. Let's wait for a future date where it's a good time for whatever reason, whether it's to convince the people that Tupo Niwa's a bad guy or whatever it is. Vava'u's not going to turn their back against Tupo Niwa. They love him. Killing Tuku'aho was the best thing for them, because now it took the burden off of overpaying tribute to Tuku'aho. Tupo Toa had other plans. He had now convinced Finau that, yeah, it's a good idea. So Finau kind of half, okay, all right, not started at all. Mariner was probably surprised that he didn't get up and immediately, what, you want to kill my brother? What's going on? Mariner did sense that, okay, he's agreeing, kind of agreeing, but he's postponing it. Let's do it at a later time, at a better time, at a more opportune moment. Then I'll help you. Finau was written about in one of Captain Cook's men in the 1700s, and they described him to be 25 years old, tall, handsome young man. This is Finau Ulukalala in the 1770s. Remember, we're in the 1805s. But one of Captain Cook's men wrote and drew a picture of Finau. Said that he looked like a real Indian warrior. Tall, handsome, brave, very active, and being that Finau was a general of the King of Tonga in the 1700s, it was fitting, the description they gave him, because he was the general of the military in Ha'apai and the west side of Tonga in his 20s. In those times in the 1770s and that era, anytime Tonga went to war, Finau Ulukalala was the general of the military, of the army back then. It says that the men were attached to him, so he was a people person. He knew how to speak, he knew how to sound brave, he knew how to look ferocious and look like a warrior, and had people want to follow and fight with him, or at least fight for him. It was written that he was the most popular man on all the islands in those days. The writer also said that his behavior, his attributes contributed to how much of a politician he truly was, because he did seek power. Eventually, he did look at it as the corporate ladder. He did want to eventually be king. He did a lot of things for selfish reasons. So although he was a great guy, people loved him and were attached to him because of his personable nature, they also sensed that he was over-ambitious, maybe overzealous to become powerful someday. And they can see in some of his decision makings showed how selfish he actually was to some point, or to some degree. Just on behavior alone, the writer of this book from the 1770s, who wrote and drew about Finau Ulukalala, knew that this person, this type of personality, or this characteristic of this guy will never be forgotten. The people will have stories about him because of what a great man he is, how the people love him, how his military forces were attached to him and loved his personality and characteristics, which from 1770s on to when he met Mariner in 1804, 1805 to 2024. He was right about that. Mariner described, at this time, he's in his 50s, Mariner described Finau Ulukalala as a seasoned politician. Although people may bring conspiracies to him, he was very careful about who he told and shared things with. But at the same time, he did want to further his career in politics, further his career in leadership and power, that he allowed things to happen, even if it was against his brother, Tupo Niwa, if it put him into the higher position based on his own ambitions, which means his end goal is to rule all of Tonga. He was very cunning about who he placed where and who he placed to do what, just so that they don't fully know his intentions, giving the people what they want to hear, just like a politician, for the benefit or the good of the people, the greater good, if it meant aspiring him higher through these actions or through these decisions. Always thinking, always cunning. His brother, on the other hand, Tupo Niwa, Mariner described him as a free spirit. He didn't have what Finau had. He wasn't as cunning, not intentionally. He had no ambitions to succeed any throne. He just wanted freedom. for his people, for himself, and his family. So the plan to take out Tukuaho, Tupo Niwa just wanted liberty. He only wanted to be free. He had no ambitions to become anything else. Let's just take Tukuaho out because he's taking away our freedoms. He's burdening us. Where Finau, on the other hand, was thinking, well, if Tupo Niwa wants to take out Tukuaho, that'll clear up a spot for me. So they had different intentions, two mentalities. Tupo Niwa would also often tell Mariner, he felt bad. I feel bad that as I took out Tukuaho, I felt bad that all the beautiful women there, his wives and attendants, had to die too. Tupo Niwa actually felt guilty about that. But at the same time, being that it's part of the custom that if you're going to kill somebody, make sure you take out his whole family, just in case anybody wants to turn around and come back at you. Tupo Niwa just often mentions to Mariner, yeah, I felt bad about that all those people had to die. But at the same time, for the freedom of my people, for the liberty of us living, being liberated from oppression, it had to happen. So Tupo Niwa has a good heart. He has good intentions. He knew what war was when it was necessary. Assassination was necessary. War was necessary so that his people can be free. His family can be free. And we know that he did feel some kind of guilt because after he killed Tukuaho, after he struck him with the axe, he picked up a kid, Tukuaho's kid. He said it was probably 2 or 3 years old. Picked him up and took him with him. People would often tell Tupo Niwa that Finau Ulukalala is not your friend. As treacherous as he is, he has his ambitions and aspirations. Be careful around him. Be armed when you're around him. Tupo Niwa would respond by, oh no, he's my brother. He's my high chief. And if he at any point in time thinks that it's beneficial that I lose my life, it's better, right? It's better that he takes my life than for him to think that I'm living planning his assassination. I'm going to live free of, my conscience is free. I'm guiltless as it pertains to Finau because he's my brother. He should have no worries or concerns about me conspiring to do something against him, which a lot of people thought that's not fair, that a good man should die, or a good man should have to be careful around his own brother, knowing that Finau Ulukalala may be your brother, but he has other plans, and you may be the sacrifice to get there. And he says, besides, I'm not going to arm myself against him. He has power, and the government and the bigger picture it's better for us all. If he thinks that my life should end, then so be it. That's the peaceful nature of Tupo Niwa. That's the innocent or the free and liberated mind of Tupo Niwa. His allegiance to Tonga, or at least to Vavu, his allegiance to his brother, he was loyal. Most loyal to him, his family, and the freedom of his people, but also loyal to the powers that be. And those powers that be happen to be his brother. Tupo Niwa is now in Lifuka. Him and his military is in Lifuka. They haven't even gone back to Vavu yet. Tupo Niwa is the High Chief in Vavu. They're waiting around to see when Finau is going to pretty much releases them and tells them, okay, you guys can go back to Vavu. Remember, they're in Nuku'alofa. They stopped fighting in Pakaimotu, and they're in Lifuka. The Hapai people are in Hapai. The Vavu guys with Tupo Niwa are now in Lifuka, waiting for orders to return. Tupo To'a finds this as an opportunity to kill Tupo Niwa. Against Finau's orders, against his advice, Tupo To'a thinks, oh, while they're still here in Hapai, before they even get to Vavu, I'm going to take out Tupo Niwa. Eventually, Tupo To'a convinces Finau, all right, I'm taking Tupo Niwa out now. Finau eventually says, okay, if you're going to do it anyway, if you find this the most opportune moment, if this is the best opportunity you have to do it before he goes to Vavu amongst all his warriors and chiefs that are there, Finau pretty much washes his hands of it, or at least approves it to some measure. Tupo To'a finally gets his time. He has waited long enough, and he feels like he's wasted enough time, or at least he's spent enough time waiting, finding the opportune moment. This is the time. Which means Tupo To'a had been around Tupo Niwa, but finds this the best opportunity. Because now he has Finau on his side, and now they're in Lifuka. They're not even in Vavu, so now's the time to kill him. Finau basically gives him the nod. So not fully in with the plan, but at the same time not denying it, semi-approving, right? Basically trying to hide the fact that he's allowing it, absolutely. Go do it. But doesn't want to show anybody or show that, oh yeah, he's in on it, right? It's kind of like how the mobsters do it. Carlo Gambino, how he did it. If anybody brought a murder to him, should we whack this guy amongst the family, in the family? He never said anything. It was basically a nod like, if you can line up the best reasons that it's best for the family and best for the business inside of the mob, the old mobsters never said stuff. They weren't like John Gotti, who got on camera and told and made stories and everybody saw it. Nah, Carlos Gambino was one of the OGs. If you brought a reason to murder somebody in the family, he would just give a simple nod like this, which is basically what Finau did. He didn't want to look like he was in on it, the conspiracy, but also approved of it by just giving Tapu To'a the nod. He also didn't want to be known and labeled by anybody that he would, a king, be responsible for murdering a good man. Everybody liked Tapu Niwa. Vavu loved Tapu Niwa. Tapu To'a, on the other hand, just hated him because he killed his dad, even though he's a son of an attendant, not even a wife. But that's the mind of Tapu To'a, and Finau wasn't going to stop. A few days later, Finau asked Mariner to accompany him. They went to a place called Mahina Fekite just before sunset. So maybe an hour before sunset, they go to this place, 3/4 of a mile off where he lived. Finau told Mariner, I gotta go talk to this guy named Toke Hemoana about some political stuff. Let's go over there and talk to him. So Mariner and one of Finau's daughters accompanies Finau to go to Mahina Fekite to talk to this guy, Toke Hemoana. Finau usually carries with him a whaling knife. It's almost like a helepelu. It's 2 feet long, 3 inches wide. Mariner kind of described it and noticed that Finau isn't grabbing his knife. So Mariner asked, you want me to carry your knife for you? And Finau says, no, it's okay. Finau said, I have no need for it. We're good. Let's just go. Mariner obviously is used to him carrying a knife, which means he was always prepared. So they were always all armed. Even though they're on the same island and whatever it is they're doing, they continue to stay armed, which obviously Mariner thought it was a habit, right? It became a habit. And so Mariner said, oh, you forgot your knife. Want me to carry it for you? The plan is starting to go into motion. Mariner mentions that when you walk, it's customary when you walk, you're walking in a line, one behind another, from the highest ranking to the lowest. And I can see that because when we were kids in Tonga, that's how we walked. If we were walking on the road, especially, if there's any cars that come by and you walk and you end up walking the line, the older kid is always up front and it goes down to the youngest. You will never let the younger guys lead any of the older kids. And if there's a younger kid in front of one of the older kids, he would grab and put him behind them. I have no idea why that is, but it's interesting how that's naturally came naturally to us anyway. Like, you don't walk in front of the older guy would walk in front and in line, in ranking of age for us. Apparently here, Mariner's talking about they walk in order in line based on ranking. And I guess in a younger generation, that's what it is. Your ranking is your age. Your age is your ranking. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So as it was Finau's daughter and him, it went Finau's daughter, and then he walked behind them in a line. As they're walking, there's a pool of water, big enough for people to go in, and so he went in and started to bathe into this pool of water, and it feels like it was, nonchalantly, go and tell Tapu Niwa to come and join me, come here. So he sent for Tapu Niwa to come. Remember, Finau doesn't have his knife, so the plan is already in motion. Perhaps, to me, it would make it look like it's casual, right? He gets into the water, he bathes. Hey, Tanga Tapu Niwa, tell Tapu Niwa to come here real quick, I want to talk to him. And then when Tapu Niwa shows up, that's when Finau finishes bathing and comes out of the water. And this gives it a more sign that, he's not armed, he's just come out of bathing. It looks casual. Here, let's go over here to Toke Hemoana's house real quick. Let's go talk to him about politics. So he's setting it up so that Tapu Niwa feels comfortable and it just feels casual, which is a great way to prepare to freaking assassinate somebody. Make them feel comfortable. No different from mobsters who say, hey, let's take a ride right up front. Or, hey, come over for dinner. And you walk into a room and don't walk out. But they feel comfortable. So Tapu Niwa shows up and they all start walking. Finau talking with Tapu Niwa, casual conversation, no weapon, Mariner behind them, and they're just walking. Remember, the homes have fencing around it, right? And inside the fencing were a few houses. Typically the wives stay in the houses with their own children, and then there's a main house. Well, Finau and his daughter and Finau and his daughter enters into the fencing, and Mariner goes into a different house on the outside of the fencing with one of the daughter's attendants, and they just hang out there and in conversation, and they start talking. Not long after they're sitting in this house with Tokehemwana, Tupo To'a comes in, he's among them, and then a little bit shortly after, he gets up and he leaves. 4 of Tupo To'a's men, they start preparing a canoe. They get the sails and the mast and they start mounting it onto a canoe and getting it ready. Mariner hears some of the women, what are you guys doing? What are you guys, it's right before the sun goes down. What are you guys doing? These 4 guys, 4 of Tupo To'a's guys tell him, Tupo To'a just told us to get one ready. The real reason why they wanted to get it ready, because Tupo To'a told them, all right, if this doesn't happen, if I don't actually assassinate Tupo Niwa and it doesn't happen, I'm gonna need a getaway vehicle or a getaway canoe. That's why they had to prepare one for him. So all this is in preparation, and now the plan is set. Finau brings Tupo Niwa to Tokehemwana's house. They're sitting in there. Tupo To'a comes in for a little bit, whatever he says. So he came in and saw Tupo Niwa. He saw Finau, saw them there. It's ready. Then he gets up and he leaves, and he has 4 guys come and prepare a canoe for him. All this is right before he's planning his assassination, or the assassination of Tupo Niwa at this point. After a couple hours, Finau he leaves, and he's followed by Tupo Niwa and Finau's daughter. Remember, Mariner's in a house with one of the daughter's attendants on the outer fencing, hanging out, chilling, talking. It was nighttime, but the moon lit their way and they start to go back. They depart. And at this point, it's Finau and Tupo and the daughter, and then Mariner, and then the attendant last. The daughter's attendant is behind Mariner. As soon as they come out to leave and they're out beyond the fencing and they turn the corner to leave, Tupo To'a and his 4 guys that he got to prepare the canoe, they jump out and they attack Tupo Niwa. They have clubs and they have weapons, and they come out and one of them swings to hit him on the head, misses and hits him on the shoulder. As he ducks and he's hitting the shoulder and he's going down or he's ducking, he exclaims to Finau, "Oya we Finau te umate." This is what Mariner actually writes down he heard Tupo Niwa say as he's standing behind them, walking, following them. Tupo Niwa exclaims to Finau, "Oya we Finau te umate." Tupo Niwa backs up into the fence, and now he has his back against the fence. Finau was a few steps ahead of Tupo Niwa, and now they have Tupo Niwa trapped up against the fence. Finau turns around, and Mariner notices that he's not truly attempting. It's like, hold me back type thing, but he doesn't really look like he's coming to try to help. And Finau exclaims out loud, "Oya we seuke ko mate tangata," which in Mariner's translation is he meant, "Alas, this noble man has been killed." While Finau is, being pretended held, he's being pretend like he's coming to help. He already knows the plan. Tupo To'a's assistants or his helpers come and they grab Finau and they pull him into the fencing of the house that they were just at. While Tupo Niwa's up against the fence fighting for his life. Finau's yelling out words to make it look like and sound like he wants to help and he's trying to help. But Mariner sees that he's pretending to be held back and held down. And he's yelling and exclaiming that, oh, he's dying, he's dead, he's whatever. So Finau didn't accidentally leave his knife. Mariner saw it a habit for him to take his knife everywhere. Asked if he wanted to carry it for him. Finau said, "Nah, I don't need it. I'm not going to need it." He didn't need it because he wasn't part of the plan. Or at least not having his knife was part of his plan, so that he doesn't have a reason to help. This gives you more insight of how treacherous a man Finau was when he put his ambitions and his aspirations over his own brother. Now his brother's up against the fence being beat down. Some other Tupo To'a's friends come and grab Finau to make it look like they're holding him back and pull him into the fencing while they get Tupo Niwa. Mariner at this time is backed up. There's nothing he can do. He's not armed either. The attendant was behind him. Now they're just watching Tupo Niwa get beat down, basically assassinated. Mariner said that he was blocking off some of the blows of the clubs. They were beating him and beating him. He was blocking off the fold. He was blocking with his hands and his arms. And Mariner said that they did it until they broke his hands, and they did it until they broke his arms to the point where he couldn't lift his arms anymore. And finally, Tupo To'a lifted the final blow to his head and hit him. And he said he hit him on his head and he kind of staggered. Tupo To'a backed up again and freaking hit him on the head again and split him, and he went down. And they continued to hit him. As long as he showed life, they kept on beating him until he was absolutely completely dead. And that ends the days of Tupo Niwa, the great, loving, peace-loving, people-loving, family-loving, Tonga-loving chief. His loyalty to his brother, for him not to have known or believed that he needed weapons to protect himself, to his brother. Also his loyalty to his brother as the king, knowing that if he does need to be whacked or taken out, he was willing to do so for his brother. But never in a million years did he think that his brother was going to help plan his assassination. Tupo To'a has finally come to this point in the story and that concludes the life of Tupo Niwa at the hands of Tupo To'a with the assistance of his brother, Finau Ulukalala. At this time, a young warrior named Latu Ila runs up and sees them. They have beat him, runs up, and Latu Ila has suspicion that Tupo Niwa conspired against Latu Ila's own father to kill him. His father is dead, Latu Ila's. So Latu Ila rolls up with his club and he starts beating Tupo Niwa after he was dead. Starts beating him in vengeance. You killed my father. It's long enough that you lived under the luxury of Vavu. It's time for you to die. So Latu Ila. So that kind of tells you that Tupo Niwa himself had his own conspiracies, and people around him, Latu Ila for instance, had conspiracies against Tupo Niwa also. Not only Tupo Niwa, but I'm sure other chiefs who have conspired the murder of other people. It seems like they lived in peace, but they always remembered who, under suspicion of conspiracy, was killing who in this time. So he's yelling, you killed my father, you murdered my father. And he's yelling and he's telling him, I would have done this long time ago if I had help from other people. But nobody wanted to take the chance of taking out a higher chief, just like nobody down below in the mob would want to take out a boss, because they're not going to get the help of soldiers or other people not to take down a boss. But now was his opportunity to yell it out and get it all out while Tupo Niwa was down and dead. So this guy was a follower. This Latu Ila guy was the follower of Tupo To'a. So he's always had that sentiment. He's always been on that side. He was always supportive of Tupo To'a, wanting to kill Tupo Niwa. He's one of the Tupo To'a's guys. While in the heat of the moment, he's saying, I was waiting for this day. I'm enjoying seeing this. Murdered my father, and now it's time to pay the piper. Mariner thought that perhaps Finau was going to be attacked while the scuffle happens. As soon as this happens, Mariner rushes to Finau's assistance. As he goes over there, another guy comes and wraps his arms around him from behind and pins him. Pins his arm, pins his body down. And then he looks up and he's watching all this and notices Finau's lack of attempt to help Tupo Niwa while they're holding him down. The women scream and they run into the fencing. They're either in the house or just at least in the fencing watching this. 10 minutes after all this happened, Finau's men, about 200 men, they show up. They gather themselves and show up with clubs and spears. And one of the other high chiefs is leading them to the scuffle. Finau go ahead and gives command to the chiefs to let the people of Tupo Niwa go ahead and load into their canoes and leave, except for some of the main chiefs. Call them over here. I want to meet with them. The main chiefs of Vavu. The other Vavu people, the people of Tupo Niwa, they can go load onto the canoes and start making their way out of here. Remember, it's nighttime now. At this time, one of the adopted sons of Tupo Niwa, Hala Api Api, he shows up and he comes over and he strikes his club on the ground in front of Finau and asks him, why aren't you standing up and rising up, and why aren't we seeking the murderers and killing them? Hala Api Api is telling him, why aren't you getting up to help so we can go take out whoever murdered this great man, this great chief of ours? Hala Api Api is yelling at him, if you fell by the club, don't you think Tupo Niwa would stand up and rise up and get all his warriors and soldiers together to come and avenge your death? What are you doing, Finau? After he got whatever he had to get out off his chest, Finau didn't reply. Usually when somebody's yelling and emotional, you would usually look down and allow them to get whatever it is off his chest. Hala Api Api, after he gets that off of his chest with his club, backs out a little bit and then sits down on the ground. Although the Vavu people wanted to take revenge right then and there in Hatpai, they also knew that they were in the disadvantage right now. Now this creates a divide between the Hatpai and Vavu people. Remember, they took the Port-au-Prince together. They went and took Nuku'alofa together. They went and took out Tuku'aho together. They were together this whole time, and now, because of Finau's ambitions to succeed the throne and to become king of all of Tonga, it has created a divide between the Ha'apai and the Vava'u people, just to appease Tupouto'a and his political ambitions. The Vava'u warriors and the Vava'u chiefs, they thought, this isn't a good place to do this. They might cut off our canoes. They're way more numerous than us, and we came to help them, and now we are alone. Even though there are a lot of them, there wasn't enough of them. Not as much as there were of Finau's guys, the Ha'apai people, and Tupouto'a's guys now. So they all chill. This isn't the time and place. So they obey Finau's orders. Most of the warriors, and most of the people get onto their canoes, and they start making their way back to Vava'u. And the main chiefs that Finau ordered to come and sit down before him, talk to him, they come and they meet with Finau. Finau's sitting there. They all show up, they sit down in front of him, and they all are looking down in sadness. They lost their great chief, but they're all looking down, which is, I've grown up around this, and usually if a group is being punished, we'll all go sit down in front of whoever it is, a parent, an adult, or whatever, and everyone would sit there and just look down, because we know that it's not the eyes that need to work at this point in time. It's the ears. You're just going to be listening now. Finau goes on to describe and to comfort them with his ability, right? His eloquent words, his ability to articulate peace, to soften their hearts and tell them that I had nothing to do with this. I had no idea the conspiracy existed. I'm letting you right now know that whatever happened has nothing to do with me. At the same time, he let them know Tupouto'a was the one. He did conspire to kill him. He did tell me his intentions. He asked for my assistance, which I promised him. But he had no intention of fulfilling it. Finau said, I promised to help him, but I just made that promise just to appease him for the moment. I had no intention of him actually doing this or me being part of this plan at all. And I only said that to buy myself time to prevent any of this from happening. He came to me with the conspiracy. I promised I'd help, but at the same time, my intentions were, I'm going to try to convince him not to do this. We all know he's lying, but he's a great orator, and he's a great articulator, and he's trying to convince these head chiefs that he had nothing to do with this. Probably doing a pretty good job, knowing his experience with people and his ability to make people be attached to him because of his words and his ability to speak. While he was speaking, all his wives and his women came down and sat down behind him. They sit there, Mariner said they sat there for probably a half hour and nobody said anything. They all sat in silence. The Vava'u guys obviously sad and angry, and Finau sitting there, hoping to have brought peace to their minds about him and his involvement, but they sit there for a half hour in silence. After a while, Finau gets up and he orders his followers and everybody to get up and for them to go back home. As they walk past Tuponiwa's body, Finau orders some of his guys, to carry his body and carry him, and so they carried it in front of Finau and they all walk with the body of Tuponiwa. As they got to Finau's house, they laid the body next to his house and they washed him off with water and oil, which is customary for them to use oil for everything, but they washed his body off and then they oiled him down. And this was done by one of Finau's wives, and also Mariner himself helped clean the body and oil it down. And nobody else offered to do this because they considered his body tapu, right? He's a high head chief of Vava'u, and so his body is tapu, and only a certain amount of people or certain people can touch a body, especially the body of a dead noble. And so it was just one of Finau's wives and Mariner himself that cleaned the body off and oiled him down. Now the thing with a tapu body, right? Because this is a chief, the body of a dead noble typically is tapu'd, and if anybody touches the body of a dead noble, then they are tapu'd, which means they are not allowed to touch anything, or nobody's allowed to touch them. There was restrictions put on those who actually touch the body, and it's a restriction of a few months, either 8 months or 10 months, depending on the level of the chief. So if it was a low chief, it was a few months, 3 or 4 months. If it's a high chief touching the body, a dead body of a lower chief, then it's only tapu for 2 or 3 months. And if it's a lower chief touching the body of a high chief, then it's 8 to 10 months. They're tapu, which means nobody's around to be around them, sleep, eat, drink with them. They're tapu for that amount of time. And in this case, because it was Finau's wife, a tapu was put upon her. But being that Mariner himself was the prince, and he had a chiefly title a lower amount of time. So along with being tapu'd, your hands are not allowed to feed yourself. Somebody else has to come and feed you. Touch the food that you touched, because now your hands are sacred property. If you wanted to use a toothpick after you ate, somebody had to be holding the toothpick, and you can guide that person's hand to pick your teeth, but you couldn't pick it yourself. Funny and strange. If that person gets hungry and nobody's around to feed them, that person cannot use his hands to eat. They have to go down and eat it like a dog. They must not touch the food themselves. This is how superstitious they are as far as a tapu is concerned. They believe that if your hands are tapu because you touch the body of a dead high chief or a dead Tonga or whoever it is that's of higher ranking, they believe that if you eat with your hands, that your face will swell up, your head will swell up, and you will die. Mariner said that they believe this so much that nobody even wanted to test it to see if it wasn't true. That is the faith and the belief of these people. Nobody even wanted to test it. Mariner, after touching the body of a chief, a dead chief, after touching Tapu Niwa, the Tongans would see him eat and would be amazed that his hands wouldn't swell up or his face wouldn't swell up and he would wither away and die. And so they credited that to the fact that he was a foreigner. The tapu doesn't apply to him because he's a Palangi guy from somewhere else. That's what they thought. That's how strongly they believed in these things. That's how strong their superstition was about the tapu itself. They didn't think that their gods governed other cultures and other people. That's all they thought. But they absolutely believed in the tapu and its consequences for breaking it. Finau's wife didn't mind it because she had just come off of a 9-month tapu touching Tuitonga's body. Mariner himself had no problem doing this. Mariner considered Tapu Niwa a good friend, a good man, a great chief, noble person. His ambitions were just for freedom, for liberty, for love of family, love of country. Mariner loved Tapu Niwa, so he had no problem and he didn't believe in the superstitions or the consequences of them either. Tapu Niwa was then brought into the house, laid on a bale of ngatu, and they anointed his body with sandalwood oil for fragrance, good fragrance and decent scent. Tapu Niwa's wives show up. There's 4 of them. They show up and they mourn over his body now as it lays in the house of his brother, Finau Ulukalala. Mariner said that they look like mad women, right? And we know what that looks like. We've been to funerals. They're beating their chest and they're beating their face and mourning and yelling, and how we see at Tongan funerals. There's always a lady or a few ladies that mourn that way. You recognize that sound. It's the sound of agony. It's the sound of despair. How could this have happened to our great chief, to our husband? And all 4 of his wives are there mourning over Tapu Niwa's body. They get together and then they start singing a song. After all the mourning and yelling and screaming and beating and punching of their face and everything, they get together and they're singing a song over him. And it says, O Yahweh Seuke, O Yahweh Guo Mate. O Yahweh, ko te ofae. O Yahweh, ko te tangie. O Yahweh, mau mauwe. And this song and these verses were repeated over the night, and they sang over him the entire night. And they would yell the things that you would typically hear at a funeral from women who do that, right? What's going to happen with me? Like, you know what? Now that you're gone, you know, you leave. You just all of a sudden just left us, and, you know. The stuff you hear at funerals. Throughout the night. And Mariner said throughout the night they would beat their chest and beat their face. They literally beat their breasts because this is back in a time where they didn't have any shirts, where breasts weren't considered part of the sexual organs, right? Or body part. Where once, you know, Christianity and the Western world showed up, then they found out, oh, the Western world considers breasts as a sexual organ. That's when they started covering themselves. But at this point in time, the women were still shirtless because breasts are just breasts. All they're used for is to feed babies. That's it. It's like walking around with a couple of giant baby bottles. You know what I mean? It's no different from walking out of a supermarket with a couple jugs of milk. They're just milk. With you goes all our happiness and our comfort and the luxury of being free and loving and laughing so on and so forth. Mariner said there's about 150 people in attendance there mourning to mourn all night. Finau and Mariner were there. They sat there and they stayed there all night. I guess you can imagine that as you can a funeral that happened today. Perhaps there was food prepared for those who came. Perhaps there was kava obviously there. Right? We already know kava's everywhere over there. In mourning and people there and among them. Inside, outside the fencing, people moving around like that. Eventually, Finau's wives, they retire to go rest. Mariner sits there and contemplates the words that the ladies sang, the words that these wives spoke and yelled, contemplated, either in truth or just in pondering over his friend Tupouniua. Mariner describes the yelling, the mourning. For those who understand what that is and have seen and heard, Tongan women mourn that way. They'd start high and then they'd go lower and lower. The more they talk, and then they'd go again. Then they'd beat their breast and beat their face. But they did that all throughout the night. Mariner contemplated of the fact that this man was accused and unjustifiably, undeservedly sacrificed. Such a good man. At this time also the security was out on the beach, out and among them, around them, just in case the Vavu guys came back to attack. They already knew what it was. But the rest of the night stays quiet and everything is good, and the next day Finau gets up and he prepares for a funeral. Tells them to load the body, it's wrapped in ngatu and tied in ngatu, and they wrap the body and they make their way to Uiha, where Tupouniua is from. 50 or 60 canoes follow, along with the king's warriors and his men. A whole bunch of canoes from the Vavu people, they follow along too. They follow the body. So they were peaceful over the night, but they are now all making their way down to Uiha. They get to Uiha and they go to the faitoka of his family, faitoka of him and his chiefs. Mariner describes it as a tomb. It's a 8x8 slab, and then on the side walls is an 8-foot slab, and this whole entire thing is a box, basically a tomb in the ground, and then what covers it is another slab, basically a giant stone, either cut or a giant stone itself that they remove, put the bodies in, and then they return back. So you have all of Uiha there. You have the Hapai people are there now, and the Tupouniua's people from Vavu, now they're there. They're all there at the Malae, they're at the Faitoka. When they remove it, they do see that it is a tomb of his ancestors, so there are people that are already in there, buried from long before, and they put them in with their ancestors, and then they cover it back up. No sooner did they cover the tomb and close, there was a circle there and people that were gathered. A guy named Siulua, one of the murderers, one of the guys who assassinated Tupouniua, his name is Siulua. He comes into the middle of the circle and pretty much calls out the Vavu people with his club. Slams his club on the ground and tells them, "Here, I'm here. If any of you think that you guys are going to come and perform an insurrection or come and fight or bring war to Hapai, come let us end it here. I was part of this entire thing. Let my death, if you guys come and kill me, let my death be the end of this." So Siulua was doing something that was brave. At the same time, he may have been trying to protect his country by saying, you know what, I was part of the assassination. You guys come, let's go one-on-one, let's fight, and let my death be the end of this. Probably to protect his family, probably to protect Hapai, or perhaps just to show his loyalty to the Tupotoa and to Finau, to show everybody that he's brave. This happens after Tupouniua was buried in Uiha in front of all the Hapai, the Uiha, and the Vavu guys now. But it didn't work. He called one out, he called them all out. It didn't work because the Vavu guys already had a plan. None of the Vavu guys moved, none of the chiefs or the warriors moved. They stood there and watched him call them out, knowing in their minds that they have a different plan. Nah, it's not gonna happen here and it's not gonna happen the way you want it. They're basically saying, we'll be back. After this happens, the group disperses. Everybody leaves. Finau orders his men to go and start securing the premises, secure Uiha, start securing Hapai. Let the Vavu guys leave so that nothing happens here. Finau's already prepping them for defense. Finau brings the 4 carronades that they took to Nuku'alofa. Finau calls for the carronades, put it in front of the fencing of the house. We're not to allow any of the Vavu guys to carry any weapons of any kind. So they disarm the Vavu guys. You can't carry any weapons. No knives, no swords, no spears, no clubs. Just to prevent any insurrection. The Hapai guys, on the other hand, they were all told to arm themselves in defense. Make sure nothing happens. We'll describe more of the funeral customs when we talk about Finaus later on in the book. Finau calls a meeting with the chiefs of Ha'apai and the chiefs of Vavu. They come together and they're sitting around a bowl of kava. And this bowl is specific to funerals of chiefs or to death itself. And he makes everybody swear. All the Ha'apai and the Vavu guys swear an oath not to create any more havoc or create any wars or any trouble while they're there. And everybody, when they make that oath, have to be touching the bowl. So everybody reaches over, they're touching the bowl, and they make the oath that no problems will happen while they're there, while they're mixing the kava. So you got one guy mixing the kava and everybody else's hands are on the bowl, touching it as they make the oath. The bowl is consecrated for this purpose, and it's consecrated to a god named Tu'ifuapulotu. Tu'ifuapulotu just means the king of the spirit world. And because they had so much faith in the gods, they had so much faith in tapu, and perhaps these days are considered superstitions, they all were absolutely for this oath. Live or die. They believe that this oath is absolute. And if anybody breaks this oath, an untimely death would come to them. And they all believe that. The Vava'u chiefs were then told by Finau, from here on out, Toi'umu, Finau's aunt, is to be the head chief of Vavu, and they are to show the same respect as they did to Niwa. Any of her kava ceremonies are to be treated with respect as well. All the Vavu chiefs promised allegiance and respect to their new chief, Toi'umu, Finau's aunt. After this oath was made, everybody dispersed to their houses. The following day, Finau and his attendants and his people, they go back to Lifuka. Shortly after that, the Vava'u people get on their canoes and they go back, except for some of the chiefs. Some of the chiefs were held back by Finau. Finau basically detains them. The reason why he detains those matapudes or those chiefs is because Finau didn't want the people or the warriors to go under the command of the chiefs to come back and go to war and to start any insurrection. So he keeps the chiefs, let the people go, get back all the way back to Vavu, so the chiefs don't have a way to fight right now while they're still there, and then eventually he'll send the chiefs off after the people get back to Vavu. 30 or 40 men come back from Vavu. Some of Finau's people, they bring news to Finau, letting Finau know, look, the people in Vavu are now under Toi'umu, your aunt, who you put in charge. And Toi'umu now wants to start an insurrection against you to be out of your control. They want to start their own nation, cut off from Ha'apai and the ruling class in Ha'apai. They no longer want to be under your command. And Toi'umu's leading the charge. Toi'umu now feels that it's time to shake off the yoke of Finau. Toi'umu understands Finau's mentality and knows that it wouldn't be a good thing for Vavu to be under that type of control, under that type of leadership. Toi'umu understands her nephew and what a treacherous person he is. Toi'umu seems to follow after the spirit of Niwa, which Vavu absolutely loved. So although this was Finau's aunt, she was also loyal to Niwa because she understood what a great man Niwa was, what a good person he was, what a good leader, what a good chief he was, and thought to show her allegiance to the righteous cause of Niwa by letting themselves go from the yoke that now sits upon them from Finau, Niwa's brother. Toi'umu considered herself a great friend of Niwa and thought, this is the best way for me to honor our relationship and our friendship between me and Niwa is by doing this for him against his brother, which is at this point the Vavu think is a wicked guy. She sits there and counsels with the Matapudes. What do you guys think? Some of the Matapudes actually agreed with Finau. Other Matapudes disagreed with what they thought Finau was doing. And Toi'umu sat here and listened to both sides. While they were discussing this, Toi'umu's sister runs into the circle while they were talking with a spear and a club and yells at the men and tells them, why is it taking so long for you guys to go and avenge our chief? If the men are going to turn women now, then it's time for the women to turn men. Let us go do what needs to be done by taking out Finau. Brave lady, probably not practical, but brave lady nonetheless. Toi'umu's sister goes on to say, you know what, maybe our fight, if we, the women, go and fight and die and sacrifice ourselves, that'll probably give inspiration to our men to then go and sacrifice themselves the same way. A worthy cause to die for liberty, for freedom, for family, not to be under the rule of a treacherous man like Finau Ulukalala. Now, it's probably a habit once people are being led by a great man like Tupo Niwa for them to wait around for orders. And it took Toi Omu to come and counsel with them. Some agreed with Finau, some didn't. Some were Tupo Niwa's absolutes, whatever. Toi Omu's sister comes in and excites the men and lets them know, what are you guys doing? What are you guys waiting for? What do you guys need to see? You need to see us, the women, go sacrifice ourselves so that you guys can finally activate the men in you. Seems like that what she was trying to do, was trying to inspire them, because they are used to taking orders from Tupo Niwa. Didn't seem like there was anybody high at this point, and now that Finau Ulukalala made Toi Umu the high chief, they're waiting on orders from Toi Umu. Toi Umu's sister comes in, and now they come up with an idea. Let us build a fort worthy of Finau coming and trying to win and not being able to get in. These guys have been to Nuku'alofa, so they know what the cannons look like, they know what the guns look like. These guys are going to build a wall that can withstand the cannon fire, that can withstand gunfire. The men now get up and they start building this fortress. Toi Umu inspires them with this entire speech. Either we sit here and let Finau come and get us, or let To'a get us, or we get up and we do something. The men get up and start building. That's when these 30 or 40 guys leave Vavu, when they go deliver the entire message to Finau and to To'a back in Lifuka. At this time, there were about 8,000 people that lived on Vavu. So they're going to build an entire fortress that'll take in all of the people that stayed in Vavu. But they want to build a metropolis that they can all stay in and be protected from any attack from Finau. This place they called the Mu'a, or the metropolis, or the capital, right? This is the main town here in Vavu. So Vavu has a Mu'a now. It's a great big city. This is chapter 5, part 1, okay? Now we're in Vavu. We've gone over the assassination of Tupo Niwa and everything, and now we're gonna go into the building of the Mu'a in Vavu in the next part, chapter 5, part 2, coming up. Stay tuned, because this is going to be a great part of the story. And everybody in Vavu, let everybody in Vavu know what's going on right now. But these are things that I've never heard of. But there's going to be a lot of things that you've never heard of that's going to be happening in Vavu. Now we're leaving Hapai and all the things that happen in Hapai, Nuku'alofa and Tonga and everything. Now we're going to focus on Vavu. So stay tuned. Okay, tua'afat.